course.
Check, am I clear?
You are echoing.
Oh, wait.
Oh, actually, Kak Ica or atau Kak Tami, can any of y'all help with the timer?
Check.
Sure.
Is it better now?
I'll do the time.
Oh, Kak Tami bisa. Okay, amazing. Kuku, you are audible.
Oh, okay, thank you. Setting my timer. Starting, POI, just unmute yourself. Jangan pronounce your hymn. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Just first, the problem in the status quo is poor right now in Indonesia, especially like MPL or PMPL from PUBG are run by private organization and still run very smoothly and run very good. In example, MPL, ML competition are very attract people and very good in running the competition from 2017 until now. So there is no urgency under the side of the house. So OP must defend why at the end of the day, the competition that already very good and smoothly in Indonesia by private organization be that bad and should be run by ASE that doesn't have capabilities and doesn't have any proof that they can do it and explain it later. Second, I think the counterfactual private entities is the one who mostly handle, right? When supported by government, it is in the form of funding or giving prize, for example. But even if only rely on private company, it is still fine, right? On opposition, we think they need to let the ASE, this SC, to control and take over most of the event, like erasing the MPL or PMPL and changing to the new rules and to the new price, for example, for them simply taking over and take control to all the events that are already running smoothly under the private organization, right? So firstly then, why establishment of AC has failed the purpose of sport, right? It take over the events, not willing, like it will not willing to merge, right? So there will be two different events that clash, right? So for example, right now in ML there is Liga Esport Indonesia and also MPL that are occur right now. Participant and audience are split. Why this is bad? We cannot focus on the funding, right? When the funding split between two organizations, it became not maximized. In example, if was Legend and also and also it's not and also why and also why we say they are not capable enough to do this kind of thing right now. An example, EVOS Legend from Indonesia become world champion in 2019 in ML competition when SC has not established yet. But then when SC are rumored to be exist in 2020, all the teams from Indonesia become their performance suddenly become decreased. Why? First, I think for Timnas in PON, in Asian Games and SEA Games, they are the strongest team in 2019. Why they are not capable to doing it? Because now AC taking over it. Asian Games, there is Mobile Legends that's supposed to be strong. They pick and choose because no capability. The one strong team are not being chosen by this teamness because there is an inside people. This is something that cannot be. This is something that cannot be run smoothly by the government. Because of that, we lost the chance to getting gold medal in SEA Games and also Asian Games because they pick and choose the candidate of the player, right? Second, I think because there is Liga Sport National right now that created by even by ASE right now has Liga Sport National. It's different from MPL, right? They cannot get into MPL. They have different price. They have different price if they winning it. Until now, even until now, if opposition want to say, oh, Liga Sport National is created for people that cannot compete MPL or MDL in the national league that created by this private organization. Even until now, this Liga Sport National that created by this ASC are being dominated by people that are already being pro player. For example, Donkey from EVOS Sport that are actually coming from EVOS Legend now joining the Liga Sport National. So it doesn't make their if opposition want to say that it's not exclusive on the rest of the house because it failed, right? The one that already being in MPL are now still dominating Liga Sport Nasional. Jadi it's become tokenistic attempt to proliferate and at the end of the day. So the conclusion here is simple. This argument from OG show us on how the government are not have the capabilities in managing these sport things inside the country, right? Even in SEA Games or Asian Games in anywhere that this show us that government doesn't have the capabilities in running these sport things, even though private organizations right now are already being running this event and also competition and also doing all this kind of things smoothly and attract many people for this esport to grow, right? So so the last thing, I think the esports still gonna grow under ourselves the house if opposition trying to say, oh, we're gonna make the esport grow by making all kind of events, but under the house we say esports gonna grow even better under ourselves the house, because in MPL, for example, or PMPL, the stage or the level is very different, right? So the one that being choose to represent Indonesia in national stage or in this big world champion stage is the one that from MPL or PMPL, not from Liga Esport Indonesia. So it doesn't make any different. It doesn't make any different if Liga Esport Nasional, Liga Esport Nasional coming to the
Opening?
uh, letter coming to the esport in Indonesian esport, right? So second thing, I think esport should be, and why we think esport should be still handled by the private teams, right? It's kind of expensive, right? Like scouting, for example, it will be better in private company, for example, like EVOS and RRQ and Onyx, you name it, all the team that run by private organizations still have that talent scouting anyways. It's not like the private organization are pick and choose like whoever want to join that have low salary like the government probably gonna do. They want to create strong team and attempt to win the prize that created by MPL that have much bigger price than Liga Sport Nasional create, that probably will increase their salary, right? Even if they don't win, it will keep getting stable income to ensure the salary of the player. So under their at the house, compared to Liga Sport Nasional that doesn't have stable income, they only make sure they won the prize in the competition that created by Liga Sport Nasional, but it doesn't create some kind of good things under the side of the house, right? So the last thing I think about the talent attraction, on their side, less people want to opt in into the sport because of low salary, not enough to outweigh opportunity cost like athletes, for example. Experience become decline. They deprioritize education at the end of the day can take first. Less talent, there will be less talent to be that want to become athlete under the side of the house. It's prerequisite to good game under the side of the house. B, in increasing inequality. Community different level of resources is so different capacity to afford additional like this sport, right? So need to pay for send kids to school than fund for sport. It impact the ability to afford salary and lucrative, right? Only big corporation, for example, like can over because negotiate favor bigger and community and also risk like EVOS and RRQ, for example. It costs substantial only can only a bit teams can do this kind of thing. Even best guys can big salary and scouting. Only rich community that can do it. It's so different from the government if they cannot do it. So proud to be OG. Thank you.
I thank the Prime Minister for the fine speech. To open the case of OO, I call leader of OP, floor is yours here.
Sorry, give me 1 minute. I want to go to the bathroom. Just a minute. Sorry.
Wait, who's the first speaker? Is it Reynatan or?
Ray.
Me.
Okay, cool.
Hello, sorry, I'm back.
All right, cool. My name is Ray. Pronounce your day. I unmute. please unmute. I will accept one from closing. We ask you to place yourselves in the shoes of an 18-year-old girl who must play for 10 hours a day for her esport team without proper pay to help her wheelchair-bound mother. We ask you to place yourselves in a group of 5 best friends who use Mobile Legends as their playground but unable to get money out of it. And this is why SE is important. This is a retrospective debate that for the progress you see in status quo, where esport industry is thriving, it's because of SE. SE is getting more prominent after COVID because the rise of remote online esports competition, and therefore SE is there to protect Indonesian esport industries. 4 points of models under O. Number 1, similar to past SE, SE is there for 3 main functions. A, to monitor and supervise esport players and esport teams. B, regulation for esport, including esport game themselves like ML or Dota. Lastly, C is that the dispute resolution, because now CONI has arbitration court, for instance, right? Second point of model is that SE is supervised by government, and there's also the election of the head of SE, like how PSSE and any other sport clubs, sport organizations have. They have the election, and that means there's a check and balance for the members itself. And SE is consisting of professional, active, or retired esport players. This directly responds to OG case about regarding corruption and regarding unfairness inside SE, because there's existing check and balance mechanism inside that, right? But thirdly, the esport teams and events are still mostly private owned. Like for instance, like the RRQ, the Onich and Boom and whatever, the NPL or whatever, those are mostly private. But we have some government tournaments like in PON and etc. Right? But what SE is essentially is an organization to regulate all of those private esport teams and events to begin with, right? But last model is that the counterfactual under government that they have to take is that at best there are regulations from the government, but there's no enforcement or there's no supervision regarding this esport industry. But at worst, under the side of the house, there are no regulations to help these esport industries. Then moving to my argument, I have 2 things in my speech, right? Firstly, why esport industry needs protection, and secondly, why the establishment of SE protects esport industry. First, let's talk about why esport industry needs protection. I have 5 important reasons, right? Number 1, I think that esport is a rising industry. It is new, therefore the legal basis is not enough. And what does this mean? It exploits. There are lots of loopholes, illegal loopholes for esport clubs to exploit esport players. Like for instance, like underpay, overwork, unfair contracts. And when that happens, these esport players are unable to to refuse or to convince or to protest that contract to the authority, right? But secondly, we know that esports is new, meaning that there are lots of aspiration and innovation ideas. The problem is that there's no platform to channel out these kind of ideas. What happens is that at best, that these players or these individuals are able to do that on social media discourse, where it is scattered and unorganized, where it's very difficult for government, for instance, to actually gather the ideas to make new policy changes and whatnot, right? Thirdly, esports, just like normal sport, there are lots of rooms for cheating, for instance, and that happens even in debate. Recently, the team dropped out because of choosing ChatGPT, for instance, right? Meaning that when cheating happens, it ruins essence of competition and the dignity of sport, especially in sports where it's still new to Indonesia. There are a lot of loopholes in the games or whatever, like they use some power or some power ups or whatever. But essentially, is that there's very little to no authority to actually understand this mechanism and to be able to penalize or sanction these kind of people, just like how the CAP did that to the team that used ChatGPT. Fourthly, is that esports is informal, meaning that under governments have the house that esports is considered as it's just like normal games and whatnot, meaning that this would discourage and disincentivize future generations, because esports are not seen as a valid job opportunity, as a valid financial opportunity as well, right? Meaning that under the house that they would most likely to disincentivize people to join esports industries. But lastly, there's also predatory competition between clubs. So for instance, under the house, the possibility is that there are big esports clubs that are going to take over and taking over the players from the other clubs to join their clubs to begin with. This harms 3 main stakeholders. Number 1, do you think that this harms esport players based on 2 reasons? Number 1, because they sacrifice a lot of their time, their education, there are also opportunity costs that they have to take in order for them to become esport players. They have to also sacrifice a lot of money, a lot of energy. They have to play 10 hours a day, and it's quite impossible for them to actually go to university like us, for instance, right? And B, because these esport players actually wanting to get something out of these industries, meaning they want to get money, they want to get popularity and whatnot. And there's not the house, it's very possible for them to actually achieve that, right? But secondly, this harms esports club because of 2 reasons also. Because 1, for instance, it's very difficult for them to actually understand how to thrive in this industry where everything is so polarized and everything is so new, because they don't understand the regulations, for instance, right? But B, because the big clubs, for instance, are actually getting when the big clubs are able to access to international people or international advisors where they are more advanced, the small clubs are still struggling how to manage it in the national level, for instance, right? But lastly, we think that, okay, on worst case scenario, on both sides of the house, there are still children playing games, children, addicted to ML, whatever, it will exist in their side. But the principal argument is that banning is going to be unstrategic and ineffective because it's their coping mechanism. So the least that government can do is that government has a moral obligation to turn these hobbies of children and young adults into something that is financially rewarding for them by actually giving them protection and giving them opportunities for them to work as a professional esport players. How should you weigh this? Three things. One, vulnerability of actor, because these are talking about the most vulnerable people that have no protection. Second, there's the current trends of there's esport becoming a rising industry. But lastly, profit to you, there's no alternative that's working on the government side of the house. Before moving to my second argument, POI from closing, 3, 2, 1, not engaging. Okay, how establishment of EC protects industries, right? There are 4 main steps. Number 1, is that we protect them through arbitration and dispute settlement. Meaning that, for instance, if there are unfair competitions, and if there are unfair exploitations between the esport club and sport players, it's very easy for them to actually, go to the court, go to the CONI court, because CONI has a court, arbitration courts for sports law, and they can actually protest them and submit the evidence and whatnot, like how normal court works, right? But secondly, there's also their whole regular meetings and representation, meaning that if you want to propose ideas of policy changes, if you want to propose ideas like, oh, the ML company is unfair because ML actually makes changes every week, for instance, that you can actually collectivize, and you as a power is much more stronger than you as an individual, right? Because if you as an individual want to complain to ML company or like Dota company, it's very difficult, but now you as SE, you have more bargaining position for you to actually complain to these companies, right? But thirdly, you can actually sanction and penalize the clubs and players that actually do cheating, and this creates deterrence, because now we can actually make the esport players to be more enjoyable and to make it more competitive, right? But lastly, you formalize esport industries. This incentivizes parents and young adults to actually see that esport industries is actually a viable and attractive industry for them to work at, right? What does this mean? This benefits 3 main stakeholders. Firstly, this benefits esport players in 2 ways. A, this protects the existing esport players because now they're actually able to not get underpaid and not get overworked. But B, this increases the proliferation of esport industries because now people are seeing that esport industry is more regulated, like how PSSE or like how like normal conventional sports, right? But secondly, this benefits esport clubs because now they are understanding how to navigate to the esport industries. They are getting more help from these investors, from the government, because now they are more formalized, they are more protected under the EC, right? But lastly, this also supports government agenda of 2 ways. A, because they actually understand now the promotion of esport actually gets the more investment, for instance, and now it's getting more formalized, it attracts more investors to actually invest in the companies and pay more taxes. But B, this also enables people, fulfill the government's agenda to enable more young people to achieve their aspirations and achieve their dreams. For all these reasons, proud to oppose.
I thank the leader of opposition for the fine speech. To continue the case of OG, I call DPM. Floor is yours here.
Hi, I'm audible.
Yes, you are loud and clear.
POI through unmute, taking one from closing, if not opening. Pivot didn't pronounce her. Wait now. Taking my timer. Yeah. Sorry, my speech in 3, 2, 1. What we think SC did to the esport community and also industry in Indonesia is they tried to take over without any sort of more understanding on what's actually needed for this esport to be proliferated, just because that they're trying to protect the athletes and club from all of the loopholes doesn't mean that it doesn't exist in the status quo. We think that what we posit is that this market or industry has been self-governing on its own, and this is why we think that it's has the incentive of their own industry, of their own private teams or private entities to be able to ensure the safety and also like the regulation in their own industry. So 2 issues to debate and also 1 exception under OG. First issue on the protection to athletes and club. We need all benefit that all posits about how they want to protect the athletes and the club because they're second league, etc. Within that this benefit is not exclusive. Things like second league already exist in Mobile Legends, like in MDL, for example, and PEN is PMNC in PUBG Mobile already exists, but also things like ban cheating is also already exists in the private competition. For example, things like MPL that is created by Munton is the one who actually try and regulate the competition, exactly because fairness and sportivism is what is still in like being upheld in the competition. And that's why we think that even if there's no government intervention, there's still incentive for these kind of esport players to on also esport government like companies to want to understand this. But look, there are three reasons also why, for example, they're actually capable of self-government and why want to dominate and exploit it, like all want to say. Firstly, we think that this kind of private companies or private entities that recruit groups, for example, have the incentive to want good players to go into their side, which means that examples they want the trust from public and also from better player to want to join them. That's why they don't want to get the rumors that they're actually exploiting the contracts, etc. But secondly, we think that now because they want to attract the interest of the audience, it's easier for you to check and balance and boycott. Example is this an esport community that is different from other kind of sport, or for example, even if they're similar, we think that the buying power from the audience is directly directed to these kind of private companies. That's why they're afraid, for example, if they actually do some sort of cheating or some sort of mistreatment towards their athlete. This is why we think that there's incentive for them to do check and balance. But thirdly, we think that they still want people to watch the game, right? But worst case, even if the domination is only by several private teams like Boom or Onyx Indonesia, for example, people still cheer for them. Why? Because what's unique from esport is that there's still potential for upsets is very possible. Exactly because esport is very unpredictable. A certain player can be good in one game and another, for example. And that's why it's very more interesting, and that's why it garners many support from people. That's why we think that it's very less likely for these kind of private companies to pick and choose just like the common sport or traditional sport that exists in football or basketball, for example. Because what's happened with esport is that people have different capacity and different unpredictability within the round. This is why we think that the allocation of athletes, for example, picking them is likely to be more like, for example, spread out in the satu score, right? This is why we think that even if government don't have the intervention to do so, it's still feasible for the regulation to exist on our side of the house, right? But secondly, in terms of which can proliferate the better sport. Second issue on the which can proliferate better for the sport, right? We think that if all want to say that they're going to take over the sport, etc. We think that exactly because they're these athletes are the one who's privileged enough actually to go for esport as pick this kind of like unintuitive career as opposed to going for traditional work. We think that there's it shouldn't be like the most priority, but we think that it's still okay because in the end you want to compensate them, because on opposition you can only rely on, for example, the value of this the value of these athletes is only existing when they win, right? This exactly because government has to control and seek accountability towards the people and the Indonesian people, for example, because they already try to take over the industry. And that's why we think that it's very hard for the local government for the government to actually want to like, for example, try to regulate and make the sport as fun as possible. Because what's different with this like government and private entity is that government need to show that it's actually a national identity, or for example, like this is something that should be exclusive to the national itself. And that's why we think that's harmful when you let the government to determine everything, right? What Kuku has told you is that this is important when you're able to show who is the better actor on this. Because we think that the intention of government to intervene is exactly because what OO tried to argue is because they think there's so many investors that likely to opt in, or for example, there's catering so much intention for people. This is what the intention there is to harness that kind of benefit, but not in the intention of proliferating the sport. Why so? We think that exactly because they think there is something that government should opt into, or showing that they actually care about the government agenda. But we think that in the end, it's not about trying to make the athletes achieve their dreams, but instead to show that government actually listen to you. But in the end, what they do is detrimental to the sport itself. Exactly because they're incapable, as Kuko told you. Firstly, they're incapable on the management. Exactly because there are many sport that should be focused on. This is why esport won't be the sole focus of the government. That's why we think that it's harmful to let this government to be the one who to control this. To be able to control this. But I think the mechanism that happen opposition is they let this SC to continuously, or for example, supporting this establishment, is that it means that in the transition to do so, they're less likely to want to involve the private entities. Why so? Because we think that exactly because now you are already a government committee that make this for example, take this under government, which means that you're more likely to try to control what kind of players is included in the team itself. I.e., even if you have boom or owning, you're likely to tell them, oh, you need to include all Indonesian team exactly because this represent their identity as Indonesian, which means that exactly because they don't understand or like they don't understand on what is actually necessary to play the game, make the game better. That's why they only try to assert their agenda that opposition also considered on. But secondly, we think that it likely to increase inequality. Why? Because we think that the people who is likely to be listened to by the government are people who, for example, can be seen as objectively good, but they are unable to identify the unique gameplay that some certain players do, and that's why they're less likely to be scouted or less likely to be played in the competition itself, right? This means that on the this why we think the intention of the government to intervene in this sport, even if they're good, is slightly less likely they have the capability to improve the sport. Example as one, the interest of people, they don't they're afraid to be blamed when the team is losing, therefore they don't try to risk it. Meanwhile, private company has the advantage to play along as long as it keep people interested and watching. And secondly, we think that now they have less access to good coaching because they don't have the experience of handling it. For example, they don't let the private entity who are able to learn from other international team, and this is why we think that this is the most important thing other than what O has brought to propose.
I thank the DPM for the fine speech. To continue the case of opening opposition, I call DLO floor is yours here.
Hello, can you be heard?
You can.
Great. POI through chat. I'm gonna take one from closing. Please give me a POI. Well, I'm gonna designate a specific time for POI for closing. Okay. Wait, is it a virtual? Oh, it's not a virtual background. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to prove in this speech why the unique role of ESI being the supervisor of e-sport activities in Indonesia is important and is like the prerequisite for any of Gov benefit. But before that, I want to answer two important questions. One, what is the real context within this debate? The motion of this House regrets demand the debate to be held in hindsight. And the reason why ESI needs to exist is primarily because during COVID, i.e. 2020, as OG said, which was the development time of ESI, that was the moment where worker exploitation was rampant and needed intervention. That was where access to competition and consistent leagues was deprived. Because when transitioning from offline MPL to online MPL, that means that a lot of the workers, a lot of the gamers were forced to stay at home. They have no security of jobs in the contract. They had no ability whatsoever to speak up, to demand justice, and to demand compensation from the team that hired them to begin with. And because of those reasons, like ESI needed to exist at that specific time. And I think that setup of context from Elo was really important. And this is already independently debate winning. Because if government cannot ensure safety for gamers in the past, none of this debate will even exist anymore. We told you that the development of game and esport industry throughout COVID period, when everyone had to stay at home, could only survive because of the intervention and the unique role of ESI. But secondly, I always hate the debate about corruption and collusion and hierarchy within government and stuff like that. I think government cannot win by listing various unrelated examples that Indonesia performance got worse Sirsa 2020, which I think was not caused by ESI. It really was caused by the online context, pushing players or gamers from other countries like Singapore or Philippines to also grind and train more rigorously, and therefore they are able to outcompete Indonesia at that time. In fact, I would flip this and I would argue that because the state of Indonesia is democratically mandated by people, they have to pick the best candidates, otherwise they are subject to massive scrutiny. The same way people criticize selection for football national team when the best players were not included within the team. What is the counterfactual? You have no place for aspiration at all if everything was held by like private entity, because it's all private rule. Imagine if you choose the WSDC or WNDC candidate based on Indonesia Open. That's fucked up. Not because that's not good, but because that is not representative, that is not accessible for everyone within the particular country. What is unique about ESI is that the accessibility and the opportunity that was given to all of Indonesian gamers that was inherently crucial in order for you to actually make the best decision for Indonesia. We flip opening government case already, their case don't exist. Closing. 3, 2, 1. I'm going to prove now why the intervention and the supervision of the state through the National Sport Committee and ASI was crucial. The context here is unique because ASI's role is very similar to PSSE, to monitor, to regulate, and to solve sport dispute. I.e., we will make leagues, we would make committees, and teams will still probably be held under private ownership, like Onyx or whatever the team name that I think opening government was really contextual about. All of them will still be included within the leagues of like ESI. We have no like interest whatsoever to just say, you know what, everything is gonna be state owned. Fuck you all, private teams. That means that the existence of ESI on top or like on supervision over private teams and leagues is crucial because of 4 reasons. 1, you have way more accountability because you are democratically mandated to be accountable. I would argue that on the counterfactual, speaking up against your private team is impossible because private teams use their power to leverage, i.e. gamers need the team more, because if gamers do not stay in the team, or if gamers expose a shady clause in the contract, you will be terminated. And if you're terminated, you will not have a source of employment anymore. So this is the same way that a lot of like companies, for example, force their way upon the workers. But that is really unique because secondly, you have a much clearer dispute resolution proceeding under our side. The way football is getting better because you have a national sport arbitration. But also the context is really important because this is a growing industry, like what leader of opposition told you. The context of esports athletes are still often quite shady because most of them are not permanent employees. Most of them do not have base salary. They get only bonuses if they win a competition. They have nothing we call welfare and job security. And insofar as that's true, you also have to believe that you have to be able to have a supervising body that is able to make sure that the welfare of all these athletes and gamers are going to be secured under our side. So that means that not only that you cannot speak up against your team, you also do not have enough legal basis to speak up against them. Thirdly, I'm going to take you after this, is the accessibility of competition. Because very often ESI has more incentive to be more widespread to rural area because that's where they have the political capital. It is unclear why private teams want to expand to those areas insofar as they are not seen to be profitable. But lastly and crucially, not only competition are accessible, it is also equal. Because the only way sports can be fun if there is no one team that is guaranteed to win in the one-dimensional league. In our side, we diversify the opportunity. We put salary caps. We put, the amount of investment that teams can pay for their players so that you have way more equal competition and way more equal access for everyone to compete. What I'm telling you there is that the supervision is crucial, even if you were to call up all of opening government's benefit, that can only run and can only be good if opening opposition case exists. Closing.
If your vulnerable actor is the athletes, realistically, they still have much better protection on our side when we exclusively take private, exactly because competition provides check and balance. You can select the best contract for yourself. If not, you're going to expose this is a bad company and no one's going to want to be hired by that company.
No. So that was the thing, right? That is the concept of oligopoly of jobs market. Because a lot of the teams can collude and conspire that we will set this kind of standard clause for our gamers, and they have no incentive whatsoever to provide them welfare. Because think of it this way, if I don't need to provide them exact job security, I don't need to spend more money, then I'm not going to do that, absent government intervention. Because all teams are going to be one-dimensional in GovBench, right? They will all agree that, let's just agree not to give these kinds of security, because either way, we will still be able to compete and get the best players from other ways, for example. So that's really unclear to me why you get that benefit. But even if you choose not to buy any of that, know that what we give to you is choice. Because MPL exists Indonesia National League will also exist in our side, not just a yearly MPL, but a constantly growing national league that is sponsored by easier sponsors and partnership. Why is it likely to be important? I would argue that insofar as you have, even if you have to insert like Indonesian players in the national team, it's fine because Indonesia government has been culpable for allowing Indonesia's jamets to be addicted to Mobile Legends. The least that you can do is to tell them that you can profit out of it. That if you're good, you have a career opportunity for doing that. That is uniquely important for access and for like equality for everyone. For all these reasons, okay.
I thank the DLO for the fine speech. To open the case of the closing half, I call the member of COF. Floor is yours here.
Okay. I'll start my speech in 3. POI, just unmute. I wouldn't be looking at the chat. So by voice, please. I'll start in 3, 2, 1. CG's contribution will be 2 things. First, I will tell you the likelihood of government being incompetent. I think this is important because OG asserted that government will be bad at it, and but there's no process analysis out of it. It's at best correlation, not causation. I.e., when ASE is established, we never want anything, but why is it caused by that? Second contribution, I will tell you the exact harms of ESE. Was that the case? Because I think this house regrets motion. So it's not enough to say that private entity did good. There needs to be an explicit harms of ASE because what you're regretting is their existence, like their establishment. This is also going to engage to OO's concern that, oh, we're fine with both private and government. They exist side by side peacefully and like have different market segmentation. I will tell you why the establishment itself is bad. Before going into those contributions, I'll tell you several rebuttals. I have 3 independent rebuttals. First, on the concerns of OO about accessibility. First response, I think the thing about esports is that its nature is that it has the least barrier of entry compared to conventional sports, i.e. to sign up for MPL is mostly free, or for you to even practice your skills, you can just do it with phone and quota. So I think it's really accessible to most people. You don't need that much government intervention. Unlike, let's say, if you want to practice football, you obviously need equipments that would be much more expensive. The standard would also need to be graded according to like professional competition standard. You cannot just play in your backyard, for example. So that means if their concern is things like, oh, we need to reach rural area, I question why this is the prerequisite, or why this needs to be done by ESE. Because I think the problem with rural area is that they're probably not going to be able to participate because they don't have infrastructure, because their tower of electricity, let's say, it's not really that good, which means that it's not done by ESE as a committee of like the sports, but it should be done generally as a responsibility of government. So you don't have to have ESE, you just need to like equalize the infrastructure. So I think therefore it decreases their urgency. Second response about accessibility, I don't think if you worry about wait, I'll take that later. If you worry about cheating, I don't think the game I don't think it's really important because the game itself is self-regulatory. Even if some bugs or like some codes are going to be like overlooked, there is report mechanism in ML, for example. If you feel like you suspect a player to do that, you can report it. Second rebuttal, this is going to talk about regulation and specific about wage. First response. I feel like if your concern is that we need to give minimum wage, to later, you give minimum wage. I think the idea about being an esport player is that your wage isn't decided per hour. It's usually decided by, let's say, your performance. So it doesn't matter if, let's say, you train 12 hours a day. That would be your own motivation, and that would be out of your own consent because you want to be better at it. You are not paid by the hour, unlike workers that is determined by productivity. It's based on your skills. So I think you gain money by, let's say, being a streamer on Twitch, or you post tutorial to play new hero on YouTube. Idea of second response of this idea of this in nature to be unstable, in unstable income is inherent in the gig economy. It's not inherent on government regulation. It's just that if you choose to work in a gig economy, that's just the consequences, and therefore the people who chose to do that already think twice about it. So that's all for rebuttals. Before I go to contribution, I'll take O.
The debate is about counterfactual. CG has failed to prove to you why they are counterfactual. It's likely to be better and stuff like that. Wage is unclear because in our side, we say that if you're good at esports, you should be hired as a formal athlete with proper contracts. In your side, they have to be continuously
Order.
So
first contribution, right? If you wanna ask about what is the counter narrative, I think it's easy to regret an establishment. You regret the process of doing that. I think so. I will tell you first of all, how do government perceive esports? Because I think this is what's missing in opening debate. I tell you that government perceive esports and therefore created ESE out of political tool for rebranding. Because government of Indonesia is facing a problem where they're branded as old schools. You are not catching up to current trends. So the incentive to establish ESI is already bad because this is merely for the sake of you looking good, you looking like you are modernized. This show two things. A, the establishment itself isn't because ESI knows what they're doing. It's simply they just want to have a good profile. So that means their knowledge of esports is limited as bad at best, misguided at worst. Second, like implication of this, it also means most likely they deprioritize esports over other sports because deep down, although you have the establishment, government of Indonesia still feels like conventional sport is like the real sport. So like the amount of budget allocated there also wouldn't be that much, and I think this neutralizes a lot of benefit from opposition bench. The framing why this contribution is important is because I think this is the likelihood of government or ESI making the wrong regulation out of their lack of understanding. So second contribution, right? I will tell you the harms of ESI exactly what's missing from opening. First, let's talk about the idea of you to choose competition. I think the thing is the politicization of esports is going to let government agenda meddle into it. OG talk about this, but they never talk about what kind of harms exactly come out of the meddling of government agenda. This looks like, for example, you only can join limited amount of competitions because maybe if the competition, the event organizer came from a country that you inherently have a dispute with, let's say to Israel or I don't know any other country that you aren't having a good relation with, you probably wouldn't be able to join that once you already sign a contract with it. You let government dictate your life. Another in recruitment. I think sure merit to some extent will be there, but there will also be political agenda, i.e., minority players might be deprioritized in the selection process because they want to have a representation of Indonesia. So maybe Chinese or Indian descents are not gonna be able to take that opportunity. Or another example, if you want to talk about regulation, I mean, what are you gonna do about Moonton? You're gonna regulate ML because they say that they do update every week. I think it's good because like the nature of esports is that you're gonna need to have continuous change because new meta, new strategy, new hero, and new map access. It's exactly because government is like they lack knowledge. They might not understand meta because they feel like it destroys the reputation. Meta is kind of like cheating because you need to do it the old and fair way. Although meta is like taking the shortcut, it's like inherent in the feature of the game, so it should be allowed. And I think that's why the nature of the competition is gonna be better, and therefore we regret this because we would rather have this be gone so that everything is regulated fairly by the private entity proposed.
I think I think the member of GOV for the fine speech. To open the case of CEO, I call member of OP. Floor is yours here.
Okay, hi, am I audible?
You are.
Okay, give me like 30 seconds to set up my timer. Okay, POI through chat. I will try to take one time. Yeah. Please don't unmute yourself. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, and I think there are lack of explanation in this debate as to what is the actual job of SE and what's their what's the government's purpose to create SE to begin with, which will be exclusively provided in CO. So let's talk about the job of SE, right? I think there are several things that I want to highlight. I think the main goal of SE is to make sure that they're able to produce a better quality of esport athletes, achieving good standings in international competitions, and are able to have a strong teams in the industry in general, right? This is because of two things. First, I think in most cases, state has always focused outward, trying to have a better reputation in winning competitions, be it in SEA Games or any other international tournaments, right? This has been precedent. We have a lot of precedents in the other traditional sports like badminton, etc., which government has always pushed their athletes outward in which they're trying to create a reputation to make our athletes to have a good quality to win all of those tournaments, right? But second, I think the state sees sport as an investment. They're looking for a return, right? Because they know that they will have to spend more money, more investment, more effort, and more human resources if they create SE and formalize a body like SE, because now it's going to be part of the national budget. They need more income. They need to allocate budgets for SE and the esport industry to begin with, right? So they wanted to have a return. That's why they wanted for them to gain income from that industry. They want to have political leverage, at least sport diplomacy, or just more revenue from the newcomers esport athletes or proliferations from the private esport club, right? Therefore, it's important for them to show that they have good athletes and they have good quality of trainings, for instance, or that they're able to push the industry into a better direction. So because of this, I think the main purpose of SE is to make sure that they have a good quality industry, to make sure that they're able to invest and to develop those industry so they can receive a return and from that investment. But we have to realize that the performance of but second thing is I also want to note that we have to realize that the performance of SE will continue to be better. I think stronger check and balance will exist and already exists in the status quo, because esport industry is getting popular, getting more popular every day. People are looking forward to their favorite athletes' performance. And the moment SE failed to provide good teams or good performance, like what happened a few years ago, for instance, critics exist, and it's so overwhelming. It's enough to be an incentive for SE to constantly be better, to hire professionals, to create a check and balance better inside the industry. But let's talk about what OO brought in this case, for instance. Right? I think unlike CO, OO tried to focus on the regulation in labor exploitation or cheating. And we appreciate this characterization, and to a certain extent, we agree with them, right? However, the characterization cannot top the previous characterization that we provide as CO, mainly because we think it does not exclusively come from SC contribution. Several reasons, right? First, I think Indonesia law will be able to solve the issue. I think the existence of CGS and the status quo has been able to has been made comprehensive and wide enough to go through contracts and MOU, especially when the esport agency works similarly with like talent agency or other traditional sport agency that work through projects and talent management, and we think that has been tackled effectively with those alternatives, right? But B, I think there is incentive from actors inside the industry to prevent cheating, because it's not going to be fair and entertaining. This look like how debating tournament, despite it's not being sponsored by government, still take care of like cheating issues and whatnot. So we appreciate OO, yes, but we think that ASI might be able to enhance, and we think that ASI might be able to enhance the supervision role inside the industry, like what OO has been trying to say, but within the lack of exclusivity in that analysis, right? So what we're going to give you as CO is we're going to talk to you about the most exclusive benefit that coming from the establishment of ASI and why we have to support. So let's talk about the better quality of industry. So to elaborate this particular case, let's break down with what happened in this industry without SE, right? Two things. First, without SE, I think there are only going to be several private institutions with a few skillful sport athletes that rule the competition, because they only care about their own institution, they only care about their own club, their own performance, and their own profit, for instance, and hampers the proliferation of smaller clubs or clubs with less resources. This is because their nature is to only care about their profits and their own achievement. They don't care about the whole industry, they don't care about developing and proliferating to other less privileged athletes, for instance, because they only care about their own institution. This is what happened when you don't regulate it with a government institutions. That is what happened when you just leave it to private institution or private investment, right? But second, they rather choose previous esports streamers, for example, already is popular or they has fans, to become part of their talents because
Hi.
they already have
Wait,
record.
wait. Sorry. I think my panel got disconnected. So can we wait for a second? I stopped my timer at 5 minutes and 4 seconds. We'll wait for Kaicha to confirm
back.
if. Oh, you're already back. Okay, cool. I just read your WhatsApp. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, you may continue. I stop your timer at 5 minutes 4 seconds. You may continue for 2 minutes and 16 seconds.
Okay. Start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Yeah, second problems I want to highlight. They rather choose previous esports streamers that already has track records or they has fans or popular compared to do like national or like regions wide scouting because it's expensive, it's complicated, it's require more effort and what. With it is bad because not only that it's gonna hamper the proliferation and the betterment of the quality in this industry, but it is also bad because it does not open more chances to new athletes or new clubs or smaller clubs to actually proliferate, right? How will we change this? Because ASI's purpose is to make sure the quality of esport in industry in Indonesia holistically gets better. They will do several programs. I think it already happened in status quo as well, where they pushes more clubs to train their talents better, incentivize collaborations or inter clubs collaborations to work better with each other, right? They also help provide national scale talent scouting to make sure that people that do not have name or do not have fans are able to get access and represent Indonesia. Hopefully that they're a good talent to represent Indonesia. They also help providing coaches, sponsoring coaches from different countries to come to Indonesia and to do like annual trainings and for instance. But lastly, also subsidize smaller clubs to catch up to the bigger one, making sure the competition does exist equally because at SE1, the proliferation of athletes and the quality of athletes to get better significantly and rapidly. What is the result? I think the result is a better quality, better standings in general because we will have more athletes, more chances for this athlete to represent and to be better, to have a better quality and join like and winning tournaments, right? Better accessibility as well for those people underground who does not have name, who does not want to do streamings, who does not have fans, but they actually have potential. They're able to be scout better and have more chance to thrive in our side, right? But this is important because we're the only one who makes sure that the proliferation does exist and the quality is better as compared to other chambers arguments who does not specifically talks about the quality of the athletes we're proud to propose. Thank you.
I thank the member up for the fine speech. To end the case of Gov side, I call Gov Whip flourish yours here.
Hi, am I audible and visible?
You are.
Makasih Reinhardt udah ditemenin on cam. Udah. So, preferred gender pronouns are going to be he, him. If you guys want to POI, just unmute yourself. I'll take one in between engagements, probably around minute 4 or 5. Yep, thank you, Kaicha. Ideally from opening, just, yeah, let Justin POI. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Upbench run the exact same case, but CO just reworded it. So I'm gonna tackle this in 2 ways. One, I'm gonna tackle the entirety of opposition case. And then secondly, I'm gonna distinguish ourselves from OG and prove why we fundamentally prove this house regrets motion better. Let's talk about Upbench. They fundamentally posit 3 ideas. 1, public check and balance. 2, proliferation. And 3, protection of athletes. I'm gonna talk about all 3. Let's talk about public check and balance. Here's the thing. If their only idea is that the public check and balance is going to happen much better because people are going to criticize the government and government are going to listen. Then why? Because government, sorry to say, are boomers that do not understand esports, but all they see is that this is a rising trend to the extent where they want to regulate this because this is a rising trend, right? But we tell you that this is actually going to be harm. Why? At the end of the day, the regulation that's going to happen is going to be mismatch problem solution, i.e., Indonesia underperformed in WUDC. So what you do, you fix the manner of the debaters instead of focusing on creating better arguments, etc. Right? This is the kind of mismatch problem solution that allows means that ESI or SC is not going to be able to properly regulate it to the extent where you're going to make Indonesia suddenly perform much better at SEA Games. What you're going to do is you're simply going to create like a tokenistic idea that these athletes are good image, etc. But in reality, the only metric should be whether or not you win the games, and that's the eventual benefit that we hinge on opposition, on government. At best, I think if you're talking about how government then is going to invest in this kind of idea much better, I think this is symmetrical with private organizations. The only additional harm on our on that the only additional harm that exists on opposition that actually becomes the crucial tipping point becomes the politicization of esports according to government agenda that disallows for not just public check and balance, but disallows for the proper quality to actually increase. What does this response tell you? This means that Gio has already directly proven to you why the mindset of government regulating ESI on regulating this through ESI on the basis that this becomes a trend means that this is going to lead to a wrong kind of regulation that you don't actually want. Within that, it is not realistic to assume that ESI just consists of like former esport athletes, because there are no former esport athletes from 10 years ago. They are all new individuals that like only in the past 5 years suddenly start to play MLCS, Go Team Fortress, and PUBG, and they suddenly like go like into the world scale, right? That's the kind of check and balance that's going to happen on our side, and that's why it's going to be like much better on the basis of private companies are going to be able to create competition that's going to properly regulate it, because all they care about is whether or not you win on a fair metric, and that's why Gio's contribution matters so much. Before moving on, I'll take Justin.
So it's unclear to me why private companies can regulate it better on their own, but private companies cannot regulate it better under the supervision of the government. I think consultation, I think Ray already proved to you that this is probably something that is to happen, but even if you don't buy that, it's still a choice anyway. We maximize choice and employment and stuff like that.
Yep, sorry, 15 seconds. We're going to prove that in the next point, right? On proliferation and why it's going to be like more fair if like we only exclusively have private. This is why you cannot regulate both government and private entities, even if private entities are the ones hosting the competition under government regulation. Gio proves to you two things. One, how governments do not get it like we do, and in fact regulations will be misguided. But secondly, counterfactual is going to be better, and it's going to be fully merit-based because companies only care about winning as opposed to image, right? This is the likelihood is simple. The bandwagon that like governments jump on means that at the end of the day, like even regulation and that kind regulation and competitions is not going to be to the extent of like you regulating it, you allowing for like you banning cheating, etc. We proved to you that how the games already protect that at the end of the day. But the regulation is going to look like, oh no, you cannot use the taunt feature in ML because it is like not according to what the spirit of a sport should be. Oh, equity team is going to be that much more strict in government held events only because you're not allowed to swear in debate rounds. Apparently, that's what's going to happen when government regulates. And at the end of the day, proliferation also doesn't happen because at best it becomes tokenistic. You don't actually increase the quality, you increase the image, you increase the manner, not the matter. That's why judging metric becomes matter only now. And whatever like the way I give my speech doesn't matter. In the same way, in kind of like parallel example of esports, at the end of the day, what matters most is that you win and you can utilize metas. But to government, that's cheating. You're not allowed to do that. So even cheating regulations is going to be wrong, and proliferation don't happen. You don't give like a fair kind of proliferation at the end of the day. Even when you try to talk about like how this reaches underdeveloped regions, we tell you how competitions can exist on different layers, even when it is privately hosted, like cup sekolah, then leading to like state level, province level, etc. And I think that's going to still be privately held, and there is incentive to do so. You already proves you that sense, meaning that on the third last clash on opposition about how athletes are going to be protected, we posit to you how even if athletes try to speak up, no, that already exists. The comparison is simple. Like If athletes are that good, they're going to be able to receive contracts from multiple clubs. If a contract is unfair, they're going to be able to not just boycott that club, but prove why that club is inherently shitty. And therefore, that athlete can not only secure a contract at a better and more fair club, but the fact that it is competition means that they're going to have much more fair contracts in the very first place, right? Talking about competition, it's actually going to be more free, and at the end of the day, not that required, meaning athletes are allowed to experiment and use different metas. That's why in these kind of privately run competitions, using like an a priori argument doesn't automatically win you the debate, but in government meta, it probably would, right? And lastly, oligopoly. Like, exactly, we tell you, because there are a lot of a lot of competitions that's going to be held. Literally, literal sports clubs give salaries like Manchester City and United. So exactly, if you prove to it it's going to be underpaid, no, the pay goes up. I think it's symmetrically, even if like during COVID era, like what Justin challenged, we proved to you how on all three of these layers, government CG still posits a better counterfactual. Let's distinguish from OG real quick. I think they failed to provide the debate in retrospect, and this is the most fatal thing in the debate. Why? I think we give you fundamentally better engagement to opposition case, and at the end of the day, OG just listing the benefits of private entities failed to prove the weighing. I failed to prove this debate, and I'm going to weigh in on two ways. One, they failed to provide the actual picturization of why it's really, really important to exclusively have it run by private companies. But two, we proved to you why ESI as a body is harmful, not just unnecessary, like what opening governments say. The verbatim line from PM is that there is zero urgency to do this. We proved to you how this is actually extremely harmful and thus has to be regretted in the first place. Our case is logically prior to opening government, and you have to credit us first before OG. Very, very proud to propose.
I think the Gov Whip for the fine speech to end the debate. I call up Whip. Floor is yours. Here.
Okay, am I audible speaking like this?
It's a bit muffled. If you can, agak muffled dikit sih.
How about now?
Hmm. Yaudah, I think it's enough. Sure.
Okay, wait ya. Kalau sekarang udah jelas.
Oke, oke. Bagus, bagus.
Okay, wait. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Notice how CG is talking about government wanting to develop and transitioning from a boomer to be not a boomer is like it's a bad thing. Because we think it is a developmental and revolutionary move that finally the people who are in the edge of my father, the boomer themselves, are actually wanting to pay attention, right? We don't care about the initial motives. This is not important. But the fact that that SC is trying to do a talent scouting, for example, like what Sutra has told you that never been engaged by CG, setting up national team, whole training camp, shows to you that the steps are already there to popularize and to promote the quality of esports itself. Like how esports are right now being on television. Your mother now understands that there are games like Valorant, PUBG, CSGO, etc. and let you buy monitor or good keyboard and other game supplies. It is solely because of the popularization and nationalization of esports player that is exclusively done with the existence of SC, with the existence of government intervention, right? Esport is no longer niche, and this is what proliferation concrete looks like under CO, and this can only happen with intervention of government institutions, very different from OO. We understand, so let's just engage more towards another case from CG, right? We don't understand why regulations going to mismatch problems are going to be the case, because in order to form a regulation there needs to be research and conducted first, discussions towards the public. Exactly, we have public participation, discourse in regulation making to represent that, for example. That's the freaking bureaucracy in regulation making, hence why regulation takes a long time to be formulated and enforced. But this is the case of OO regarding regulation and competition, and it becomes a deadlock anyway, right? So the most important thing to talk about is how SC and government institutions are the only actor that has the incentive to actually better the quality of the players and also the industry at the end of the day, and how this is going to be sustainable and the outside of the house, right? So let's just move to tackling down opening government alongside with CG, because we think that some of the others arguments coming from CGS fall in the same logic of OG and simultaneously frame out the illogical arguments coming from OPPO. OG said that there is no urgency because right now the industry is already good and how SE is jumping up the industry by not picking the right players, for example. Notice that OG is very assumptive, right? We think the spirit of the motion is that for us to give validation which one is the better option, whether to have SE or not, right? The scenario is the same under both sides of the house. Esport is a rising industry on both sides. Regulations are not that perfect simply because it's newly enforced and newly established. And hence why this is not important. Due to the fact that regardless of the access of SE, labor laws
Closing.
protection still exists. No, thank you. Police enforcement still exists. Cancel culture still exists. Social control still exists. But the most important to talk about is how SE is just like any other sport association. It will focus on the quality of the esport players, just like what Sutra has already told you. What does this look like? In parallel, we have PBSI, Persatuan Bulu Tangkis Seluruh Indonesia, or PBVSI, Persatuan Bola Voli Indonesia. The main focus of these associations are not to monitor or regulate or dispute. It is coexisting in a status quo to, talent scout, for example. How do we talent scout? For example, like what Susi Susanti do for badminton, simply search for players in other sides of remote area in Indonesia, for example, simply because government is the one who has bigger access and bigger incentives to do this, since Indonesian government has goal and purpose to set foot and standings in the new industry and to have political diplomacy in sports, for example. So if CG tells us that rebranding is not a good thing, that if the trade-off of rebranding is for government to actually search for a good player in the remote area, we think it's okay anywhere. This directly engaging with CG case regarding minority. Exactly, scouting to Papua, like how we have Boa Salosa in soccer, or Kevin Sanjaya, or Lim Swee King as athletes in badminton. Only happen under government intervention. No, thank you. Because government has the incentives and push to treat all people equally because that's their fucking job as a government, for example. Moreover, we can invite coaches from another country, just like how we invite Shin Taeyong or Luis Milla. Or in badminton, we have Harry Ipe Pangardi in BBSI. And also think about, those things can only happen because government is the one who has, political or diplomatic power against another country, so that we can easily invite them, for example. So, but facilities in infrastructure, we think government is the only entity that can provide you facilities like training camp, supplies like what CG concerns about. How is that feasible? Simply because the government has the budget allocation under the Ministry of Sports, and the motivations for the government to actually allocate this budget is, for example, is not only merely transactional, like private institutions has the motivation, right? But also another kind of motivations like mengharumkan nama Indonesia, for example, or giving pride to the country and to the family, and so on and so forth, right? So we think that the motivations, whether it's business and whether it's more like nationalism, are coexisting under outside of the house, and it gives more check and balances towards the development of the esport industry itself, right? This is something that is very exclusive and never been engaged towards and by the government side, right? We think the thing about budget allocation is that it is not because of Indonesia has no budget package. We have high purchasing power with high GDP, even during crisis like COVID. But the thing is, when government has incentives to be better and to allocate budget better, people like government bench, despise, and not let government actually use the budget for good, right? Because the steps are already there. And just like what O has said to you, the people in SE are not that stupid anymore. But we think that this is exactly why we need to support the establishment of SE so that it can do their job better, right? Let's move again, right, to the case of the government. We think relying solely on private companies is regrettable. No, thank you. Government bench can claim the benefit, but the incentives are not sustainable. Why is that so? First, esport is only going to be a business commodity under their set of the house. No nationalism, no pride added as variable, no no kewajiban whatsoever for private institution to make this sustainable. Notice how all industries has their own ups and downs. Maybe right now it looks rising and promising, and this is like private entities having the interest to take care of it because there will be transactional benefits. So the moment when the industry is having a hard time, for example, it becomes a dying industry in the future, like what happened in Indonesia right now, in badminton Indonesia right now, for example, most likely investment will pull out themselves from the industry, right? Exactly, because there is no longer transactional benefits under the side of the house, right? But the incentives under our side, under CO, is not merely because of money, right? Just business, but because the government actually wants to have better quality of players, better quality of talents, for example, and government trying to have good reputation towards the public, and will push them to not suddenly abandon the industry when the industry is facing a hard time. Under our side, business and government can still coexist. this? How does this look like? For example, like Jarum sponsoring Indonesia Open, not the debate, but the badminton event one, or HSBC or BNI sponsoring Asian Games, and so on and so forth, right? The more, the merrier, right? We have more check and balances, for example, because it's not only about business, but it's also about government responsibility to take care of the the society, for example. And also at the end of the day, we are the only team that going to champion the better quality of the sports industry for us. Thank you.
I thank the opposition whip for the fine speech, and I thank everyone for the great debates. So please wait for the OA for the deliberation, and yeah, so please leave the breakout room. Bye bye, and see you
Thank you,
later.